The morning my daughter slid a real estate brochure across my kitchen table, I should have heard the door closing behind it. But I was 68 years old, 2 years a widower, and so starved for somebody to sit across from me at breakfast that I would have signed away the moon if she'd asked me sweetly enough. She did ask me sweetly. That was always her gift. "Dad," she said, "you can't keep rattling around in this big old house by yourself. It isn't healthy." I remember the brochure was for a townhouse development out by the highway, the kind with vinyl siding the color of oatmeal and a clubhouse where they show you a swimming pool nobody ever swims in. I remember the coffee I'd made was too strong because I still measured grounds the way I had when Eleanor was alive, for 2 cups, not one, and I'd never broken the habit. I remember the September light coming through the window over the sink, the same window I'd reglazed myself in 1991. I built that house. Not all of it, the bones were there when we bought it in '79, but I rebuilt most of it with these hands over 40 years. The back deck, the dormer in the attic where my son used to sleep, the kitchen cabinets I made out of quarter sawn oak the winter Eleanor was pregnant the first time. There wasn't a doorknob in that place I hadn't touched 100 times. So when my daughter told me it wasn't healthy for me to be there, what I heard underneath was that it wasn't healthy for her to keep worrying about me, and I would have walked into traffic before I'd be a worry to that girl. Let me back up. You need to understand what I thought I was protecting. I'd worked construction my whole life, then ran my own small carpentry outfit for the last 20 years of it. 3 trucks, 6 guys at the peak, finish work mostly, the kind of trim and built-ins people pay real money for in the nicer neighborhoods. We never got rich, but I was careful. Eleanor was careful. We paid off the house. We put a little away every month into a retirement account. Even the lean years, even the year I broke my ankle off a scaffold, and we lived on cans of soup and her paycheck from the school cafeteria. When she died, pancreatic, fast, 11 weeks from the diagnosis to the funeral, I was left with a paid-off house worth somewhere north of $300,000, about $90,000 in retirement savings, Social Security of a little over $2,000 a month, and a hole in my chest, the exact size and shape of a woman I'd loved since I was 19. I had 2 children, my daughter, the older one, and my son, who I hadn't spoken to in 6 years. I'll get to him. My daughter was good to me after the funeral. I want to be fair, because in the telling it would be easy to make her a villain from page 1, and that isn't how it went, and it isn't even how I think it was in her own heart. She drove the hour from her place every weekend that first winter. She cleaned out Eleanor's closet so I wouldn't have to, folding her mother's cardigans into boxes for the church while I sat on the bed, unable to lift a finger. She put her hand on the back of my neck the way her mother used to and said, "We'll get through this, Dad." And I believed her, and I was grateful, and I let her become the whole of my family because she was standing right there and my son was not. Her husband I'll call my son-in-law because that's all he ever really was to me. A salesman. Medical equipment, then solar panels, then something with crypto that I never understood, then back to selling something else, always between things, always this close to a deal that would change everything. He had a big laugh and a soft handshake, and he called me Pop in a way that made my teeth itch, but I told myself I was just an old man set in his ways. And there was my grandson, 15 that fall. Quiet kid, built model airplanes, the only one of them who ever asked to come out to my garage workshop and watch me cut dovetails, and I loved him so much it embarrassed me sometimes. So that's the table the brochure landed on. Now you understand why I picked it up. The pitch came in pieces over a couple of months, the way these things do, so you never feel the full weight of it at once. First, it was just worry. The stairs, the icy driveway. What if I fell and nobody knew for days? Then it was the money. Did I know how much I was burning on property taxes and heating 6 rooms I never used? Then it was the loneliness, which was the true thing they used against me, because it was the one thing I couldn't argue with. Then, one Sunday, my son-in-law leaned back in my own kitchen chair and laid it out like a man closing a sale. "Here's the thing, Pop," he said. "You sell this place. You're looking at 300 grand, easy, maybe more the way the market's gone. You don't need all that locked up in a house you're rattling around in. We've got that finished basement, the in-law suite, your own entrance, your own bathroom. You'd have your independence, but you'd have family. And honestly, it'd take a load off Caroline. She lies awake worrying about you. Did you know that?" I looked at my daughter. She was looking at her coffee. "And the money," he went on, smooth as a hinge, I'd oiled, "you put it to work. I've got a thing going, commercial real estate, a strip plaza out by the new distribution center, ground floor opportunity. We pool the family resources. You're not just an investor, you're a partner. You'd be doubling that money for your grandson's college before you know it." There it was, the college. They knew right where the soft spot was. I told them I'd think about it. I fought about it for 3 weeks, and what I fought about mostly was the silence of that house. How I'd started leaving the television on all night just for the voices. How I'd catch myself talking to Eleanor in the garden and then stand there, embarrassed, hoping the neighbor hadn't heard. How my grandson's laugh had been the only sound to fill those rooms in 2 years that wasn't sad. I sold the house that spring. $322,000 after the realtor took her cut. I'd never seen a number that big with my name attached to it. I sat in the title company's office with the pen in my hand, and I thought about the dormer, and the oak cabinets, and the new family that bought it. Young, a baby on her hip, and I told myself I was passing it on, the way you're supposed to. Eleanor would have understood. That's what I told myself. Of that money, I kept $80,000 in my own account because some stubborn part of me wouldn't let go of all of it. The rest, $240,000, I wired into my son-in-law's opportunity, a partnership, he called it. I signed papers I didn't fully read in a lawyer's office. I didn't choose, with a lawyer who, I'd learn later, worked for my son-in-law and not for me. I moved into the basement of my daughter's house with 2 suitcases, my tools, and Eleanor's reading chair, which was the only piece of furniture I couldn't bear to sell. I want to tell you the first few weeks were good, because they were, and because if I pretend otherwise, I'd be lying to make myself the wiser man I wasn't. My grandson would come down after school and sit on the floor of the suite while I sanded a little jewelry box I was making for my daughter's birthday. We'd talk about his airplanes, about a girl he liked but wouldn't admit to liking, about whether I thought he could get into the engineering program at the state school if his math came up. I'd make us grilled cheese on the little hot plate they let me have. For a while I thought, all right, this is the deal. You trade the house full of ghosts for a house full of people. That's not the worst trade a man ever made. The change was so slow I can't point to the day it started. Maybe it was the first time my daughter knocked on the door at the bottom of the stairs before coming in, like I was a tenant. Maybe it was when the grilled cheese hot plate disappeared for safety and the little kitchenette they'd promised me in the suite never got finished, so I had to come up to the main kitchen to eat and started to feel the temperature in the room when I did. Maybe it was the night I heard them through the heating vent. Sound carries in those vents. They never think about that. My son-in-law saying the plaza deal had hit a snag, and my daughter's voice, tight and low, saying, "Well, we can't give it back, can we? It's already in." And the cold that went through me then, sitting in Eleanor's chair in the basement, the cold of a man who has just understood something he isn't ready to say out loud. I asked about the money the next morning. Casually, I thought. How's that plaza coming along? My son-in-law didn't even look up from his phone. Slow. These things take time, Pop. Real estate isn't a microwave. And he laughed his big laugh, but it landed wrong in the room and my daughter found something to do at the sink with her back to me. I let it go. God help me, I let it go because the alternative was to know. By that fall, a year, almost exactly after the brochure, I had become furniture in my own daughter's house. They went to my grandson's robotics competition and didn't tell me until after. Thanksgiving, my son-in-law's family came, loud and prosperous, and I was introduced to them as Caroline's dad. He lives downstairs, the way you'd mention a water heater. I ate at the end of the table. Nobody asked me anything. My grandson tried. He kept looking down the table at me. But he was 15 and outnumbered, and I waved him off. Go on, talk to your cousins, because I didn't want him to carry it. That was the night I admitted to myself what I'd done. I'd sold the only thing that was wholly mine, handed the proceeds to a man I'd never trusted, and bought myself a folding chair at the end of someone else's table. The money I could maybe survive losing. A man can rebuild from $80,000 in Social Security if he's careful and his health holds. But I'll tell you what I couldn't get past. Lying awake on that basement pullout, I'd done all of it. Every dollar, every signature, leaving the house I built, for her, for my daughter, to take the load off her, to be close to her, to matter to her. And it had bought me less of her than I'd had when I lived an hour away and she drove out every Sunday. You can take a man's house, you can take his money, but there is a particular cruelty in taking those things and giving him distance in return. It was January when I found out how bad it really was, and it was my